Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. Let's see. All right. Good morning. Hi, Caitlin. I hope we're all doing well. All right, everyone. It's 9:35. I think that's my cue to begin. Thank you for stopping by this session and joining me during this discussion. In just a few minutes, well, actually, the next minute, I'm going to switch over to my presentation, so I won't be able to see the chat. But just to let you all know, I'd love for you to ask questions if you have any, or make comments if you have any. So feel free to unmute or turn on your camera or whatever and just chime in. Like I said, I won't be able to see the chat while I am in the full screen presentation mode. So just feel free to unmute. All right. So now I'm going to switch over and start the presentation. So hopefully you guys can see this all. If you can't, please let me know. My presentation today is about nutrition education, health outcomes, community building, and specifically I want to talk about how interactive cooking lessons can be used as a model to promote better, healthy eating habits. And so I'm Richa Bisht. A little bit about me is I'm a third-year medical student at USF. I grew up in Tampa. I got my bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences from USF, and I'm proud to be a medical student here and to serve the Tampa community, which I love so much. A little bit about my background in terms of my relationship with food and nutrition. I've been volunteering for the last few years with a few different nonprofits, teaching kids around Tampa about nutrition. And it's been an incredibly rewarding and exciting experience for me. And just in general, other things that I'm involved with. I'm involved with an organization that helps provide free healthcare to local homeless and refugee populations. It's called Tampa Bay Street Medicine. We have a refugee clinic that I work with more closely. So if any of you have interests in that, please also feel free to reach out to me about that. All right, and just a general disclaimer, this is not medical advice in this presentation. I am a student, so I am learning. So please forgive me in advance for any mistakes. So yeah, still in the process of learning. This is not medical advice. And then, like I said earlier, just some general ground rules for this presentation. You can submit questions in the little Q&A box. If you can also write comments in the session box. At the end of the presentation, I will exit out of this screen and then read the Q&A. But as I said earlier, I would love discussion. I would love for you guys to chime in whenever you want and ask me questions or offer your thoughts or whatever. So just feel free to unmute. I think you guys should have permission to do that with the settings that we put on for this presentation. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So the outline of this presentation, we'll talk very, very briefly about why nutrition education is important. I'm sure you all are aware working with food and hunger, but just to kind of hit that point home a little bit. And then the bulk of the presentation will be kind of a photo narrative. So I'll talk about my experiences working with different food-based nonprofits and the different programming that we've done, and specifically the interactive cooking lessons that I mentioned within the title of this presentation. And then we'll end with a question from me for you, just some food for thought. I'd love to hear your opinions and just like a Q&A at the end. So talking about nutrition, it's no secret that diet is important for every aspect of our lives. It's one of those modifiable risk factors that contributes to a whole host of diseases, heart disease, diabetes being two of the more prominent ones. But the burden of these diseases on the US, on the world, are significant, and a lot of the times they come down to diet. Although genetics certainly plays a role, don't want to minimize that at all. Diet also plays a role, along with physical activity and smoking and other lifestyle factors. But if we can think about modifying our diets and our dietary habits, then I think that's a key way to address the issue of rising chronic diseases. I included these two graphs or these two images here just to kind of illustrate that these are really prominent illnesses and they're on the rise. So the one on this side on the left describes prevalence of diabetes, which is different from what this graph on here is showing on the right. This is talking about heart disease death rates. So not really comparable, but just like I said, to illustrate that these illnesses have a huge impact on our population here in the US. And it's important to think about diet when we think about how do we treat these illnesses, how do we prevent these illnesses. And despite how important nutrition is, it's unfortunate that a lot of times we don't really learn about it. A lot of what we know about food and what is healthy and what to eat comes from our family, our friends, the media. certainly plays a huge role. And so we're not actively learning about what is good or what is healthy. And I think that can be an issue, especially when we talk about these chronic illnesses. So the CDC says that US students receive less than 8 hours of required nutrition education each school year, which is far below the 40 to 50 hours that are needed to result in behavioral change. So that's kind of a really striking figure that kind of just emphasizes, like I said, the fact that nutrition education is something that is not adequately addressed in our country or in most parts of the world, to be quite honest. Another quote from the CDC: the percentage of schools that provide required instruction on nutrition and dietary behaviors actually decreased between 2000 and 2014. So it went from 84.6% to about 74%. So took a little bit of a step backwards, which is even more alarming considering that chronic illnesses are on the rise. So something needs to be done. And one model that I'd like to propose here to you all is these interactive cooking lessons. So now moving on into the second part of my presentation, describing to you some of my experiences. I started working with nutrition lessons back in 2018 and kind of started off doing more one-time pop-up event style lessons at community and school gardens. And so I specifically worked with Tampa Bay Farm to School, which is a great organization. Their goal was to bring school gardens to Tampa schools, particularly in lower income neighborhoods. And so at the time, I believe there were 4 partner schools, and Kids Kitchen was a brand new program that had developed out of this idea to tie in the gardening aspect with sustainability and sustainable living. And so it was actually kind of co-started by another fellow USF undergraduate student. And I kind of very luckily, coincidentally, met her and was able to join this incredible program right before their first public event, which was at Turner Bartels K-8, which is also my old middle school. So it's kind of like a really cool full circle moment for me. Yes. Anybody turn on their mic? Okay, never mind. I thought I heard somebody. But so this incredible program was started in 2018, and this was the very first event. And kind of the model was having this pop-up kitchen that would accompany the gardens that the nonprofit was working in. So this was, I think, the grand opening of the garden at Turner Bartels. And so Kids Kitchen was there alongside the grand opening to kind of show some of the kids there the possibilities of what the literal fruits of their labor could end up being like, and to kind of encourage them to think more positively about fruits and veggies and plants, of course. And so our emphasis was on plant-based cooking, not to say that you shouldn't eat dairy or meats or whatever, but more so just to keep the focus on plants and to emphasize the role that plant-based protein can play in a good, healthy diet. But like I said, this program was initially started from more of a sustainability perspective. And so I was coming as an undergraduate interested in going to medical school. And so I felt like there was a lot of opportunity to bring in more of a health perspective. And so kind of what the model was initially was we would have a cooking demo. So you can kind of see here on the upper right, we would show the kids how to make the recipe. And usually these recipes would be very, very simple. So things that could be easily assembled within a very short amount of time. And generally recipes that were good for a large family. So things that were cheap, ingredients that were easy to acquire, while also kind of trying to introduce some newer, interesting flavors that maybe they weren't familiar with. Like in this particular case, we made a quinoa garden veggie salad. Quinoa isn't really something that a lot of people eat typically, but it's actually surprisingly nutritious, surprisingly good. Like it tastes pretty good, and also easy to make. And so that was kind of the basic premise of each of the cooking demos. So having a recipe that was um, easy to access, cheap, relatively, and then also nutritious. Um, so we would do these demos, and then interspersed within the demos, we would kind of engage the audience. So kind of eliciting some critical thinking, getting the kids to really be actively a part of the demo process and getting them excited about the food. Because if you hand a kid a plate of veggies or a plate of weird little yellow things, they might be like, ew, this is gross. But if you kind of get them to see the process and to kind of think about what's going in there and get them excited to answer questions, because kids love answering questions, then they tend to be more amenable to the recipes we found over time. So at this event, we did the quinoa garden veggie salad, and then we also had like a blueberry smoothie, I think, which is not shown here, but they were a hit. And like I said, these flavors aren't really that common. And in this particular case, we also had like bell peppers and spinach and kale and stuff like that. But the kids were still kind of interested in trying it and were excited to try it because we had engaged them throughout that entire demo, and kind of gotten them to be more receptive to the idea of these new flavors. And so then we would, next to these demos, typically have like another table where we would have like either fake plastic veggies to kind of help kids see what veggies look like. And also we'd have like a little post survey. You can see here Chris, she was one of the board members for that nonprofit, and I currently work with her in our new venture. But she's here filling out like a little post survey for this kid, where kids can kind of describe to us how they like the recipe. And usually we'd have it in kid appropriate language and like imagery and stuff. So this kid probably could not read, or maybe he could, but not that well. So we would have like little images of like smiley faces that he could circle saying, did he like the food or not? And then sometimes we'd also have little coloring pictures where kids could kind of color in different veggies as another way to just kind of engage them a little bit more. And another important part of our process was having like a taste test, like a week or two prior to the event, to kind of see how good our recipes are, and make sure that they're kid approved, kind of. So prior to this event, we all gathered at someone's house and we tasted a couple different recipes, and then ultimately settled on the two that we did here at this event. But I think that was also an important part of the process. So that was the model that we maintained throughout that year. Here we went to Sweetwater Organic Farms. So instead of a school-based farm, here we were at just like a regular community garden / farm. And so similar approach, we would set up shop, have our little demo, engage the audience. In this case, our audience was more of a mix of adults, as you can see, and kids. So trying to find that balance between making it kid friendly while also not patronizing the adults. And just using that as a way to kind of highlight how the things that we grow in our garden can be put in some really delicious, easy to make recipes. And so that was at Sweetwater Organic Farms. And then these are just a collection of additional images from some more events that we did. I think this was at Cork Elementary, I want to say. And this, I think, was at the Tampa Heights Community Garden. So once again, doing demos. In this case, we incorporated some heating elements and made breakfast tacos for the kids. And making sure that we're not only teaching them how to make the recipe, but also incorporating little nutritional facts. So very basic things like, what does protein do? Well, it helps you build muscle, things that kids can easily remember and not feel overwhelmed by. And also what we did is we worked in the gardens too, because I think working with the kids in the gardens and then also showing them the cooking side of things helps create that sort of full circle moment where they get to see the plants that are growing and then kind of see the end product going into the food. And so that was a really great experience. But what we learned from doing this is that having a one-time event is great, but it's not the best way to encourage long-term behavioral changes, right? Because if we're only going to a place once and we're meeting these kids one time, what are the odds that that brief 30 to 60-minute interaction is going to result in a lifetime of change, of adopting a healthier eating habit? And so that was kind of something that we had realized but weren't really sure how to address, until we kind of very luckily came across an opportunity to do long-term cooking lessons, which we felt were a lot better for us because we could build stronger connections with the kids. And through that connection, we could hopefully encourage them to adopt these changes in dietary eating habits. And so we ended up working pretty closely for some time with the Temple Terrace Boys and Girls Club, which we were invited to serve food at when it first opened. And so then after that, we held gardening lessons at the club and cooking lessons. And as I said, it was a really great way to kind of establish a long-term relationship with these kids and ensure that we were there week after week, kind of reinforcing the same concepts of healthy living, sustainable living, nutrition, why it's important, while also, of course, teaching them how to actually assemble easy to make snacks and recipes. So kind of talking more about our format here. So we had a nice classroom, so that gave us more opportunity to kind of decentralize the cooking. So rather than all the kids crowding around and watching us put together the food, we gave each student or each pair of students or each group, depending on how many ingredients we had, like a cutting board, appropriate utensils, age appropriate utensils, not giving a knife to like a 4-year-old, but just kind of like giving them the opportunity to put the actual food together while we were kind of there to supervise them. So we started off with just like talking kind of about the recipe, doing a quick nutritional overview. We would also kind of sprinkle in some sustainability topics. So talking about like why composting is important, why recycling is important, just kind of basic info like that. And then we would pass out the ingredients. The kids would assemble the meals. And then what we also did kind of later on as we kept doing these lessons is we would have some of the kids serve the other kids. So working with this after school group, not all the students could fit in the classroom. So we would work with maybe 20 or so. And then there'd be a group that was kind of left out a little bit, unfortunately, because there just was not enough space in the classroom. So what we would do is we would have the kids who were preparing the lesson make enough surplus for the kids who are not in the lesson, and then they would go out there and serve the kids, and it kind of created like a nice, kind of like a friendship, bonding over food type of atmosphere, I think, that kind of promoted like just, kindness and sharing and things like that, which was an unintended, but I think a really appreciated consequence of the lesson. And then we would have the kids take charge of their own utensils and instruct them to kind of clean up their space and put everything away, kind of reinforcing, responsibility and things like that. And then that would be the event. That would be the whole lesson. And so this is an example of one of my favorite recipes to do with kids because I feel like it's so easy. It's a little rice cake with some sun butter or peanut butter, depending on what you like, with just some fruits. And here we have a little cat face on the rice cake. And then kind of alongside the cooking lessons, there would also be gardening lessons. And so here you can see some of us putting together some plants in a little kiddie pool. Once again, kind of reinforcing that circular concept of putting things in the ground and then harvesting them and putting that into our food. And kind of the next phase of how we improved upon this model was at this point I was in medical school. I was a first-year student, and of course, running a program like this takes a lot of volunteers. It takes a lot of assistance. So not only were we in need of people, but we felt like it would be a great way to kind of bring the community together a little bit. Because the medical school is not too far off from where this Boys and Girls Club was, but oftentimes as medical students, we don't have the opportunity to interact with the people that we ultimately are serving and treating as patients. And so I think this gave all of us kind of the opportunity to do some of that and really get to know the people in the surrounding area of the medical school. So what I would have them do is I would give the medical students the recipe that we were doing, and then I asked for them to prepare like a 2 to 3 minute nutrition talk, and they would give that nutrition talk at the beginning of the lesson, and then they would kind of facilitate the assembly, the supervision of the food throughout the rest of the lesson. And so we had a few different groups of volunteers, and overall it was a really great success. In this case, you can see here on the bottom, we put together these little fruit mice. And then in this case, this was, I think, actually almost exactly like a couple years ago, around Halloween time, we put together some apple sun butter teeth. We felt like it was Halloween appropriate. And so once again, the goal here was to kind of give students the opportunity to put food together themselves, because a lot of these kids that we were working with, they ranged from elementary to maybe middle school. A lot of them didn't really know how to use a knife and to spread peanut butter on a rice cake, or even like using like a basic butter knife to try to cut up fruit was not something that they did. And so having them do that themselves and assemble the food themselves allowed them to kind of practice those skills and build upon those skills. And our hope was that hopefully this is kind of empowering them to feel like they can do that at home, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. We want to teach them the recipe at the Boys and Girls Club, but we want them to go home and be like, Mom, I want to put together a snack today, and then feel empowered to do that with what's available in their fridge. And so as you can see, like, these recipes are super simple. It's not much to it. I mean, we're just assembling fruits in a way that's a little bit more visually appealing. But the goal was to keep it simple because we want the kids to be able to do this at home and to kind of become more amenable to these different fruits and to these different flavors that we were introducing. So that was a really great kind of piece of the whole program, having the medical students get to work with folks from the community. But then COVID happened, and the theme for this conference is resilience, and it certainly did require a lot of resilience, I think, in general, for all nonprofits everywhere, to find ways to serve their community and to continue meeting the needs of the people that they were promising to serve. So because of the pandemic, we could not go into the Boys and Girls Club and do live demonstrations. That was just not feasible for a time. I think they also just stopped the after school program in general. So we really lost contact with these kids, and in kind of brainstorming ways to address this, as most people did, we kind of fell on the idea of virtual lessons. And so we created a series of virtual, like, video lessons basically. And so we would create these video lessons, do the demo kind of as a pair, incorporating those nutrition facts, incorporating elements of sustainability, composting, We even, in this case, you can kind of see off screen a little bit the compost bin to really hit that point home, just so that we're continuing to emphasize those principles that we did while we were in the physical Boys and Girls Club. And so this was our way of, like I said, just continuing that that process. And so along with these videos, we put together these lesson guides. So what we would end up doing is we would give the counselors this link to the video. We'd give them the lesson guide so that they can kind of run the show. So we would provide the ingredients. They would do the lesson on their own, so that the kids can continue to get that experience, but we don't have to be physically present. We were not allowed to be physically present. And so in this case, just to kind of run through quickly what a lesson guide would look like, we would have these learning objectives, kind of an emphasis again on helping the kids feel confident in the kitchen, helping them feel empowered and just get more comfortable, understand basic knife skills, and then benefits of fruits. Once again, not trying to make them dietary experts, but just kind of emphasizing like fruits and veggies are important, and they're something that we should strive to incorporate into our diet. And then, of course, talking about sustainability, something that was important to us and still is important to us is kind of aligning ourselves with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and using those as kind of like benchmarks almost to assess how we're doing, by making sure that we're meeting those goals. And so then we would include information about like how the food should be prepared, information about how the lesson should be put together, basically going into like how the table should be formatted, how the kids should be arranged, providing the actual link, and then making sure that we are kind of keeping that interactive element. So although the kids would watch the video, we would instruct the counselors to pause it every once in a while, ask them a question, to kind of stimulate some critical thinking, get them to feel more engaged in the recipe making process. And then just kind of at the end, once again, like emphasizing how everything should be assembled and like disassembled and just basic things like that. So that was one thing that we did as a group. And then kind of on my own as well, I worked a lot with the USF Health Service Corps. I don't know how many of you are familiar with USF Health and all the things that it does, but the Service Corps is run by the amazing Mrs. Kent, Miss Ellen Kent, who's awesome. She basically kind of built connections with USF Health and different organizations around Tampa, and the goal is to connect students with these organizations and get students to be involved with the surrounding community. And so she invited us to kind of, me and a few of my friends who are also focused on nutrition, to do some of these lessons. And so we did a virtual lesson for the Tampa Parks and Rec summer camp. Here in the top of the screen, you can kind of make out the video feed of those kids, some of those kids sitting there, and then the second group over here. And so we had slides where we talked about the different food groups and what is a plant-based diet, and how do we put together easy to make recipes. And then we actually did like a live recipe demo, once again doing one of my favorite recipes, the happy face cakes, and using that virtual sort of feed as a way to continue spreading the message of how important nutrition is. So just to kind of show you what some of the slides looked like, I really like to emphasize the My Plate guidelines. I know growing up, maybe you guys can relate, but I learned about the pyramid This is kind of the replacement to the pyramid, and it emphasizes kind of having a balanced plate with fruits and veggies, proteins, grains. And so I kind of like using this because I feel like this is a really easy visual aid for kids, especially because, and also just adults, because, not everyone has like a measuring cup or a scale at home at all times. But if you're able to kind of look at a plate and be like, okay, this is kind of how we're arranging this, then you can still kind of achieve that dietary balance while not having to do a ton of math. So I like my plate. And so we would kind of discuss the different food groups, as I mentioned, and then kind of break it down group by group, talking about, why veggies are good for you, what are the actual recommendations in terms of how much you should be eating every day. And so that was a really great experience. And then another really cool workshop I got to do, again, through the USF Health Service Corps, was for the Woman to Women program. I don't know if how many of you are familiar with this, but it's basically a program that supports pregnant teens. And so they provide a wide variety of services for these ladies. And we were coming in from a nutrition standpoint, talking about, foods to eat in pregnancy, foods to avoid, things that can make you nauseous. And so this was kind of more of a departure from my previous work, which, as I mentioned, was largely with kids. This is more about food and dietary recommendations for pregnant women. But I think, kind of the same principles still hold. We're trying to connect with people and give them these recommendations in a way that they are more, that they can be more willing to follow. And so here is a screenshot of like some of the folks that were on the call, several medical students here, and then several program participants here as well. And just to kind of give you guys a glimpse into what we presented, we emphasized how to make nutritious, quick meals in pregnancy. So talking about things to avoid, and then also kind of ending with another sort of food demo. Once again, you guys, I love this fruit and rice cake. It's really good. That's why it's one of my favorite recipes to do. And kind of giving them that parting advice as far as like how to make a quick meal. And then another really great opportunity, once again through the USF Health Service Corps, which is so awesome. I hope you guys have the opportunity to work with Ellen and the Service Corps because they do such great work. Was working with Metropolitan Ministries and presenting to some of the staff there as well as some of the residents there about how to put together affordable meals. And in this case, I was coming more from the lens of my work with Tampa Bay Street Medicine, which I mentioned, that serves the homeless population here in Tampa. But once again, similar points, teaching very basic information about different food groups in a way that's kind of easy to remember and hopefully not too overwhelming. And so that was kind of the bulk of the virtual lessons that I was so lucky to be part of during the pandemic. And that kind of brought us towards the end of 2020 with the question of like, what are we going to do? Because the pandemic unfortunately meant that a lot of the previous programs I was part of could no longer do the work that they were hoping to do. So a lot of us who were formerly working on that project felt that we should continue some of the work that we were doing because we had put together a really great and unique group of folks from different backgrounds, me, health, other folks from sustainability and business. And so we felt like we had an obligation really to keep doing this kind of work because there aren't too many groups that do this in Tampa. And so we got together and we co-founded Well-Fed Community, which really is an extension of all of our work that we've been doing for the last few years, except taking it a little step further. and really kind of emphasizing the food aspect, emphasizing community building, and really kind of using relationships with nonprofits and our different partners to benefit everyone. So, well-fed community, our tagline is making food make sense. And our overall mission is to build healthier communities through sustainable food systems. And so for us, that means doing some of these live cooking demos. It means sharing recipes that are easy and nutritious and healthy. It means incorporating those elements of sustainability like composting and recycling, but also kind of bringing the whole community together. So we didn't want this to be us kind of coming into a space and being like, this is what you should do. We wanted it to be more of like a, hey, we have some things to share and we'd love for you to kind of engage with us in a kind of bi-directional conversation about how we can ensure that our community, because it is ours, we're all living in the same environment, can be healthier and just overall do better as a group. And so with that in mind, we founded Well-Fed Community, and like I said previously, we felt like there was this gap in nutrition education, and so we wanted to address that gap through the live cooking demos, but also kind of almost center all of our work on kind of the relationship between food and communities, and how we can make that collaborative and not just us coming in and telling people what to do, making it more of like a back and forth sort of constantly evolving conversation while keeping nutrition education at the forefront. And so we were really fortunate to have probably the most amazing nonprofit partner you could ask for, which is Well Built City, run by John Dengler, who is phenomenal. And you may have heard of him because the Well does a lot. One of the things that it does is it does food distributions at several different locations in Tampa, several times a month. And so in addition to that, they also run like a bike shop where homeless folks can kind of work their way up to obtaining a bike and, gaining independence, gaining mobility through the bike. And that's just, a small portion of everything that Well Built does, everything that the Well does. And so because of their emphasis on food and their relationship with food and their experience, we felt like the Well was a perfect partner to work with. And so that's kind of why we named our group Well-Fed Community, because we wanted them to work with us. And it's really great because a lot of the programs that we do out in the community are kind of side by side with the Well's existing programming, such as the food distributions. And so some of our programs currently include the Let's Get Cooking classes. This is the program that I'm most involved with, and that's the fourth Friday of every month at Harvest Hope Garden. It's right near Fletcher, and I think like 22nd Street, I want to say. But it's a really great space run by the UACDC, which does a lot of great work. And so we go out there and we do these demos similar to all the previous work that I've been mentioning throughout this presentation. We have a demonstration of simple, easy to assemble foods, quick, kind of addressing like a wide audience of kids, but also parents, and giving them food samples to eat and making sure that we're engaging them throughout the demo with questions and making it like a collaborative discussion. And that's kind of right next to the food distribution that happens at the same time. So folks can come by, get food for free, and then attend these cooking lessons. And so, and then next to the cooking lesson, there's a garden in front. So there's that whole, like I keep saying over and over, the almost like full circle moment where we're getting the food growing, and then we're getting the food, and then we're being taught like or we're sharing like how people can utilize the food. And so that's one of our programs. And then another one of our programs are these grab and go nutritional demos. So these are like every other Monday at the church on Waters Avenue that the Well is based out of. So we have an incredible group of people who run the whole organization, but one in particular mostly does the grab and go demo. And she goes out there, and because we started this all during the pandemic, we wanted to make it pandemic friendly. And so we came up with putting healthy food in like these little boxes along with a recipe card and giving it to people who are coming by to go to the food pantry at the church. And then another program that we did, once again in collaboration with the UACDC, more of an after school type program, similar to the Boys and Girls Club programming, but slightly different, adapted to the environment that we're in, is Cooking with Five Senses. So teaching kids, more of like a smaller group, about healthy recipes that they can do, and engaging them throughout the lesson, but also engaging them within the garden, and really emphasizing like using all of our senses and engaging all parts of our minds and bodies when it comes to food. And then kind of one of the newer programs that was recently started, which is so cool, it's called Well-Fed Minds, and it's in partnership with the AMROC Fab Lab, which is in University Mall. And basically they wanted to put together, you can kind of see it back here, a hydroponic garden in their room in the University Mall, and then kind of have these kids who are working there, I think coming for like summer camp lessons and whatnot, to build a garden, but then also kind of see ways that the garden can be utilized in kind of like a real life way. So like our role is kind of like building the connection between the building of the garden and then the eating and the recipe assembling and all that sort of good stuff. So this is really, really cool, a really unique sort of project, I think. And these are just some of the programs that we have going on. We have a couple other that are kind of, I think, still in the works. And so a lot of really exciting stuff on the horizon too. And it's really incredible. I feel so fortunate that we have the most amazing team that is behind this group. And certainly, you know, without their expertise and their dedication and commitment, this would not be possible. So really amazing work from the team. This is some images from the very first Harvest Hope lesson that was done, and I'm standing right here in the corner. This is kind of like the setup that we would have. So we'd have our tables, and you can't see it in the picture, but there's a garden that's kind of like on this side, on the left of the screen. And then we'd have folks kind of gather around, we'd do the demo. And in this case, we also wanted to pass out little bags of quinoa. The recipe we did here was the quinoa salad, which is, along with the rice cakes, one of my personal favorite recipes to do. And so along with that, we'd give folks this little recipe card, you know, with the goal of having them take the quinoa home and hopefully make some for their family. And kind of a theme with all of our recipes that we've done, but especially in this case, I think it's most evident. We wanted to make sure that everything was accessible for folks. I think I'm kind of running out of time, so I'm going to try to wrap up quick. I don't have too many slides, but another thing that we did was kind of emphasizing the community aspect of things. So we did a refugee recipe showcase. There was a Latin heritage showcase that was recent. That was so cool. Really kind of bring people together from all parts of the community and introducing us all to each other. And then yesterday we won an award. So the Community Impact Award at the 2021 Innovation Gathering was given to Well-Fed Community. Unfortunately, I could not be there because I was at TGH, but the incredible ladies who are behind Well-Fed, the rest of the executive board was there. and they received this award. And I mean, it's really incredible, just the amount of work that has been done within such a short amount of time. And this group is so amazing. Like, I truly cannot. I could sit here and brag all day about these ladies. Like, they're amazing. And so it's really amazing. It's really awesome to be part of this group and to get to work with them. And then future directions, we want to keep building our brand and, involving research potentially and making our data collection better and establishing like proper curriculums, which is kind of my personal focus, making sure that we're kind of really adhering to our principles and delivering our lessons in a way that is efficient but also true to our mission. And question for you guys, I'd love to hear from you. How can we improve nutrition education and see that reflected in better health outcomes? So a very broad question. Feel free to let me know what you think, either now or you can email me, or in general, you can email me about anything that I've talked about, anything on your mind. If you're interested in working with WellFed, if you have ideas for what we should do, if you have comments, questions, feel free to email me. My name's pretty unique, so you can also look me up or something and contact me through any type of medium you find me on. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you. I'm so honored that I got to talk with you all today. I'm going to close my screen and open it up to questions. I don't know if anybody has anything that they want to ask or say. Just let me know. Am I still sharing my screen? I can't even tell. All right. Hopefully you guys can still hear and see me. Does anyone have any questions? All right. I'm going to take that as a no, but if you do at any point, please reach out to me. Like I said, I would love to hear from you. So yeah, I would love to hear from you. And it was such an amazing honor getting to speak with you all today. Thank you to the whole team here putting this conference together. It's really spectacular. And I hope all of you guys enjoy the rest of your day and have a great rest of your conference. I'm still going to be here for a couple more minutes, so feel free to unmute if you have questions. And just let me know. Thank you, Sherry. I appreciate that. So my email is, I'm going to put it in the chat. Here it is. So it's Richa Bisht, RICHABISHT @usf.edu. All right. right, guys, it's 10:25. So if you want to attend another session, then there should be a few more popping up in the sessions tab. I'm still going to be here for a few more minutes. All right, reading what you said, Brian. Awesome. I love that. I'm glad I could help. And if you have anything else that you want to ask or like any thoughts or whatever, feel free to let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Hi.
Hi, morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Where are you?
I'm in Tampa.
Oh, I am too.
Oh, cool.
I don't know what's showing up where my name is. I think I added Metropolitan Ministries to there.
Okay. I see Chris Gates. Is what I see.
It doesn't say Metropolitan Ministries.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to be here today. My eyes are definitely being a little bit more open to what's going on in our community and our world.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I have a question. Are you supposed to be in the networking session?
Yeah, I think the session hasn't started yet, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they wanted to give us time to get to the session. I don't think the session starts till 10:35.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right.
So we can either talk, or if you want to take a break until 10:35, whatever you prefer.
No, I'm totally fine. Yeah, sorry. I just wasn't confused. This layout kind of confuses me, so I wasn't sure where I was, but
Yeah, and I think sometimes they're also waiting a couple minutes to get people in, because
okay.
I see a lot of notes in the chats, and a lot of people are. I mean, I'm sure it's supposed to start on time, but they're trying to be, they're trying to help everybody out to get to where they need to be.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
So where do you work?
So I'm a medical student at USF.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I just kind of gave a presentation. Which session are you here for? I'm sorry. I think you might be in the wrong session because I was just in the 9:35 session.
This is going to the nutrition. I guess, are you leading this one? It's nutrition, education, health outcomes, and community building.
It just ended. I just ended the session. I'm
Oh,
so
you
sorry.
did?
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Maybe okay. So I'll leave here, and then I guess I'll get back on at 10:35.
All right. I'm sorry for the confusion.
That's okay. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for all you're doing at USF.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye.